The Sex Ed with Tim podcast is recorded on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands.
You're listening to Sex Ed with Tim.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sex Ed with Tim podcast. I'm your host, Tim, certified sex educator. I identify as, I don't even know what I am now. To those of you who don't know, I'm gay, I'm Asian, otherwise known as the diversity hire from HR. Today on the show, we are just so proud to represent diverse communities. And who better to speak about diversity than a white man, I think. Is that how you identify?
A cis white man, no less.
A cis white man, of all things. And he's not gay, but the other one, I can never say it properly. Straight?
Sure, I'm straight. I mean, I think we're all on the spectrum, but I definitely lean on the straight side.
There you go. He's the host of Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. Please welcome to the show, Shane Rogers. How are you, Shane?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is very cool.
Thanks for coming on, Shane. And like I said before I hit record, I just wanted to talk about experiences. And I guess comedians really have like the best views when it comes to really any sort of life experience and sex, dating, drugs, rock and roll, whatever. So before we get into that, how about you tell the audience a little bit about what it is that you've been up to?
Wow, yeah. First off, I don't know if I agree with the premise there. I think we comedians have the most unique, maybe, perspective on that. I don't know about the
Fair
best.
enough.
We are some messed up individuals.
Are we all?
But that's true. I guess kind of across the board, everyone is. But what I've been up to, I have been, COVIDing for a long time. Before COVID, I was doing a lot of comedy, traveling around doing shows. And since COVID, I've actually been kind of taking a step back. I did a show at the Punchline pretty recently just to kind of get my feet under me and have some fun. Did a lot of older material just so that I knew it would work, and then tried some new stuff. And now I'm busy writing. I'm doing a lot of writing. And doing little, open mics around the area just to kind of build a set back so that I can go back and do some work on the road. So it's kind of a rebuilding period for me right now. Yeah, but it's been fun. It's been definitely an interesting time, I think, for everyone in the comedy industry. Things are changing, and it's a learning experience right now. But mostly I've been doing the podcast, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. That has been my creative outlet, me and a good friend of mine. And that's been really growing. We've had a lot of success with that. So now I'm starting to get back out on the road, but I don't want to neglect the podcast too.
For sure. What's your podcast about?
So Midnight Facts for Insomniacs, it is about facts, basically. My good friend Duncan, when we were younger, we went to college together. We went to high school a little bit and then college, and we were in bands together. And we've always had this dynamic where he's very expressive. He's very gregarious. He's an outgoing guy. He's very silly. And I was always a little more reserved and a little bit more academic. And, I was like, I got a scholarship to college and all this stuff. And so,
a nerd.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I was a nerd. I would definitely say I was I was driven. I was very driven academically, and he was less. And so I would always kind of lecture him about stuff, and he thought it would be fun to sort of turn that into a podcast. And so we have a podcast where luckily we're really lucky to have a big fan base, especially on Discord. got a few hundred people in our Discord all the time. They're always talking about the episodes, and they'll set up a poll and they will choose a topic every week. So, we've done everything from Scientology to, various other cults and QAnon, and then everything from, time travel or things that are currently in the news, different wars and things. We just talk about whatever they come up with and whatever the topic is, and I'll research it for a week, and then I basically present it to Duncan, which is kind of like how our life has gone, is always me researching things and then lecturing Duncan about them, hopefully in a kind of comedic and entertaining way. And we have a really good chemistry. We've known each other for so long, and it's kind of blown up. It's been really fun to see it grow.
And I do enjoy your episodes, the ones I've listened to, and you guys are quite entertaining. And sorry, that sounded very sarcastic. You're quite entertaining, just a tiny bit. When did you get into the swing of things when it comes to comedy? When did you find out you were funny?
In college, I think we all have that group of friends that you'll sort of sit around with and make jokes and mess around. And my friends would always say, you should do comedy. I think a lot of people hear that. And I had a comedic newspaper column every week. And I went to UC Davis, and they have the Aggie, and I had a column in the Aggie, and it was comedically oriented. So I was writing a lot of comedic stuff. I was writing funny stuff every week. And I got into the habit of kind of having to write humorous stories every week. And so when I graduated from college, I still had all of these extra columns that I hadn't written, and there was a lot of stuff in there that, I just started publishing online on this website. And there was this girl who contacted me, and she was like, "Hey, you're really funny. I work at a comedy club. Have you ever thought of doing stand-up?" And at the time I wasn't really into it. And then she ended up becoming the general manager of the Laugh Factory when they opened the Laugh Factory in Chicago. And she messaged me again, and she said, "Hey, I now run a club. If you ever are in Chicago, come by and I'll put you on stage." And, not obviously on 8 p.m. on a Friday or something, but she was like, "I'll give you a few minutes and see how it goes." So I ended up in Chicago, and I did a set there, and it went great, which was kind of funny because very few people, their first set, usually you bomb.
Bombs,
and I did really
right?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did really well, but then promptly bombed for the next few months. But I thought, from that first set, I thought I was ready to go. And, but that was great. That was kind of where it started. And then just went back to square one, starting from the Laugh Factory, and then went back to doing, open mics, and had to build a set and learn how to do comedy. And then it all sort of snowballed from there.
How do you recover from all that bombing? Because after one bomb, I feel fuck, I'm just not meant for this. Screw it. I give up. Stick to my
I had
writing.
those moments. I'm telling you, I had those moments. I mean, I remember calling my girlfriend at the time, driving home from comedy clubs or little bars in the middle of nowhere, and having been ignored for 10 minutes on stage, or having something thrown at you, or there are a lot of these little open mic comedy venues are places where people don't expect and don't want comedy. And so, you go up at a Mexican restaurant, I remember, and people are just trying to eat their burritos. They don't give a damn about what you have to say. And it's really demoralizing. But what it does is it gives you a thick skin. I think if I had bombed my first set at the Laugh Factory, I would not have kept going. But getting that taste of what it felt like to be on a big stage and having people really into it, that was sort of the drug that I kept, that was the high that I kept reaching for again.
Ego boost.
And so I was willing to handle, it kind of got me, it sort of got me hooked, the gateway. And I did a lot of bombing after that, but you start to develop calluses. You just get to the point, if I bombed at a big club now, that would definitely hurt. But it's unlikely to happen, because once you get to the point where you have enough material that works, it's going to work everywhere. Maybe one or two jokes will bomb, but your set's not going to bomb. But doing new stuff, especially now, what I'm doing is going to open mics and doing a bunch of new stuff. It bombs pretty regularly because you just don't know if something's going to work. And so, if you have a 3-minute bit that you just wrote and you go to a open mic, maybe one or two jokes in there work, maybe 3, and then the other ones just fall flat, and you just get used to it. And you get to the point when you've had enough success where it doesn't faze you, because well, if I was doing my good stuff, you guys would be laughing, and or if this was a real show, I'd be doing well. So you I mean, it sounds egotistical or kind of rude, but you get to the point where you're like, you people don't matter. You're a test audience, and you're not paying me anyway. So who cares? And so
That's
you
true. Yeah.
yeah.
It's very like, you know what, I learned from my mistakes, or I know that this doesn't work. I'm going to improve upon it, and then hopefully get a bigger laugh next time. And one of the sets that I saw, we were talking about it before I hit record, was back in 2016. And man, you had some guy in that audience laughing his fucking ass off, and you were like, this guy needs his own mic for like a whole hour of just him like cackling. I was like, wow, you really enjoy comedy there, bud. Holy shit. How did you get to that tight five? Because like, how long were you doing comedy until you got to that 2016 set?
So, boy, when did I start? So I think it's been about, wow. I mean, I hadn't been doing comedy that long. Those bits were old. So how long it took me to get a tight five was probably, it wasn't very long for 5 minutes. I think I was very lucky in that I started with this one bit that I had about my cat. And it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't brilliant, but it always worked. It was just a bit that for some reason I could really sell it, and it always worked. And that was one of the first things I ever wrote. And so I always knew that I had like, it was like a 2.5 minute, maybe 3 minute bit. And so I had this bit that I could go on stage and just know would work. And then I just had to write another, 2.5 minutes around that for a five. So I did a lot of like bombing for 1 or 2 minutes and then closing strong with my cat bit for a long time, right? Like that was what I would do, was just go up, do these 5 minute
Your cat
sets.
was your strongest.
My first joke
Yeah,
would
yeah.
bomb. Yeah, my first joke would bomb, my second joke would bomb, and then I would do the cat bit and it would kill. And so, they would bring me back, and I would just kept trying new bits in the beginning to figure something out. So it didn't take that long before I had a solid five. But to get from 5 to like 15, which is really where you're going to be hosting shows, right? Like to
Yeah.
get past at a comedy club and to start hosting for bigger comics, you need 15. And to get from the 5 to 15 took me probably like 2 years. I mean, it was a painful process to where I would say I had a good 15. I would definitely, when I got past at my first comedy club, I could open and it would be fine. I could get through it, but it was an up and down set. And to get to the point where I had a set that would kill for 15 minutes was at least 2 years, I think.
I'm curious as to what this cat bit is that kind of started this whole journey to getting to that 15.
God, I remember. I couldn't like do it now because I just don't. It was so many years ago, but it's somewhere online, and I tried to take it down, but someone kept sending it to me, and they were like, "Haha, your cat bit's still up." And because I hadn't posted it, someone had videotaped it and posted
damn.
it. So I actually messaged the person and said like, "Hey, I appreciate that you put this out. Like that was many years ago. Could you just take this down, please?" And never got a response. So it's still up somewhere. But it was just about how like my cat is basically like a girlfriend that doesn't like me. Like it's like living with a girlfriend that doesn't like me. And I think there was something about like a sex tape that trying to make a sex video and the cat getting in the video. I don't even remember all of it, but it just killed every time. And I stopped doing it as soon as I had enough material to not have to do the cat bit anymore. I stopped doing it because it wasn't, it definitely wasn't super original, and it wasn't something I was really proud of. But you have those bits that you get locked into sometimes because they always work.
Yeah, they're oldies but goodies. If I remember correctly, it was like the joke was that you were trying to make a sex tape with your girlfriend, and the cat always kept getting in the way. So it was like, fuck this. And then the joke led into like a threesome or something. Like you were planning a threesome.
That sounds right. I don't know, it's been so long. It's funny how you just like, there are bits that I really miss too. I used to do this one bit about self-driving cars, and I don't even remember it. I tried to, after COVID, when I went and did a show at the Punchline, I was like, I should do the self-driving car bit, and I I can't remember it. Like I have no idea. I know like a couple of the lines in it that I thought were really funny, and I would have to rebuild the whole bit, and so I just gave up on it. I was like, oh well. And I don't think I have it videotaped anywhere.
Ah, damn. Well, hopefully someone out there has it stored somewhere because I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
you
good
know.
to. This is a good thing to remind younger comedians is record a lot of your sets, just so you
Yeah.
have you can see your progress, and then also you can remember bits later.
Yeah. And hopefully that'll motivate you to have one day your own Netflix special. Uh,
There you go.
but mostly I wanted to talk about like, our views on sex, love, dating. 'Cause this is a sex ed podcast. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, as a comedian, do you have or did you have any chuckle fuckers when you're on stage?
Yeah, for sure. It was the time that I started doing comedy was kind of right before like Me Too and real, and I'm not someone who complains about political correctness or anything, but it definitely was before, it was more the era of like comics still being kind of rock starry without having to worry about your behavior as much. And so there was a lot of that going on. I definitely partook. It coincided with the beginning of kind of I went through a period of pretty extreme sex addiction. And so yeah, there were not just, like a girl after the show that happened pretty frequently, but then there were also like couples. Like I had, I would get propositioned by a guy to go hook up with his wife in the parking lot, and I did that many places.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild. It felt like being kind of like being a musician, which I was when I was younger. Me and the co-host of my podcast, he was the singer in the band, I was the guitarist, and we had a good band, and we did some touring and were reasonably successful, but we never, ironically, like we never had groupies. We never had the like rock and roll experience. So I think I was making up for lost time when I started doing comedy because I kind of felt like I was getting that experience. So yeah, I mean, I had a lot of nights where, I'd come off stage and just be looking for who am I taking back to the hotel?
Well, I think it's because like, and you know what? It only happens to male comedians. I don't know why. Like, not. I haven't really heard a lot of like female comedians who have had chuckle fuckers after a show. Uh, and I don't know. There's just for me, speaking as a gay man, when I see a guy on stage that's funny, I find it kind of like an aphrodisiac. I'm like, all right, this
Hmm.
guy's funny. He's very aware. I'm gonna fuck him, and I have. Uh, I won't- Success. So I'm also wondering then, like, have you had any sort of like more memorable favorite experiences on the road? It doesn't have to be sexual, but this is a sex ed podcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were a lot of experiences that sort of all blend together. You end up with
Mm,
this sort of blur of like, I was also drinking a lot at the time, and I'm sober now. I went through Sex Addicts
congrats.
Anonymous. I went through Alcoholics Anonymous. I definitely had to like turn my life around a little bit. But what is unfortunate in some ways about that period of time is there's a lot of it that not necessarily I don't remember. I wasn't blacking out a lot, but it all became sort of a blur of like alcohol and hooking up. But I definitely had experiences like the one where actually at a pretty local comedy club to where I am. I live in Santa Cruz now, and not too far away, there's a comedy club that I did a show at. And yeah, right after the show, I was taking pictures with people because that's kind of one of the things that some of the clubs want you to do. And this couple like leaned in as they were taking the picture, and the guy was like, "Hey, my wife thinks you're really hot." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." And that it was a little weird thing to say, but um, afterwards he was like, "You got to come to a bar with us." And I was like, "Well, I usually, all the comics usually go to this bar down the street." And he's like, "Okay, we'll meet you there." And they did. And then yeah, he just proceeded to make it very clear that
He
I
wanted
should
to fuck
stay
you.
with the. He's like, yeah, he's like, you don't want to have to drive all the way home. It's a long way. You'd have to go over the. He's like, why don't you just crash with us? And I was like, I don't know.
Wow.
And yeah, and then he ended up having me. So I just started like making out with his wife in the bar, which was very weird. And he had friends there, and they clearly all knew that it was a swinger couple. Clearly, no one was like batting an eye. They weren't worried about it. They weren't even being affected. And then yeah, so I went back to their place, and he just watched. And it was I had experience with that before because I had done. There's a very I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be familiar with the idea of like bulls and cuckold kind of situation.
Yep.
And so I had done that before as a quote unquote bull for couples. So it wasn't that weird to me, but it definitely was weird to have the association with the comedy, like the fact that they had seen me be funny and that was what turned them on, and that they were going to like come to more shows and become fans. And he's watching me bang his wife. It was interesting. I was pretty drunk too, so that probably helped. But it wasn't super awkward. And then afterwards, like we all just sat around drinking and talking. And I think she and I ended up sleeping there, and he slept on the couch in the living room, and I slept in there, and we had sex a couple more times. And I think one of the times he came in and watched that too, and we just kind of ignored him. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that. There was another night where I hooked up with a heckler one night, which was interesting. Yeah,
I gotta hear this.
So this woman it was at this show, this pretty popular show, but it was in this big restaurant / bar, and it was kind of a practice show, but it would get a good crowd. And there was just this one woman who was so drunk in the beginning, or you know what? She wasn't even that drunk in the beginning. She was mostly just, I think, one of those people who thought she was, quote, helping the show. And she was just yelling and like shouting out, taglines, like things that she thought would be funny after a punchline. And she was just ruining the show. And I actually wasn't on stage yet when she started heckling. She was heckling the guy before me. And so by the time I got on stage, I was really pissed off because I knew she was going to start.
It's fucking annoying.
She had ruined his set. Yeah, it's the worst. And so when I got on stage, I was kind of primed for it. And as soon as she started in on me, I just went after her. And it was maybe a little mean, but it worked. It definitely shut her up. It got the crowd on my side for the most part. I think maybe I was a little meaner than I needed to be. And she shut up, and then the rest of my set went well. And then when I got off stage, she was really like, I went over to her just to kind of say, hey, no hard feelings. And she was pretty offended. She was like, you're a dick. And I just had to explain to her, like, that's not how shows work. Like, I know you think you're helping, but you're not helping. You're making this worse.
Listen.
Yeah. These people paid, right? Like, and you're ruining their night. And I was like, look, let me buy you a drink. We'll just hang out and,
bury the hatchet.
We can talk about it. Also just to like distract her from fucking with the next comic. So we went to the bar.
Smart.
And ended up drinking. And the comedian who'd gone before me, he just kept coming up to me, and he was like so mad at her because she had totally ruined his set.
Aww.
And so and this is like one of the douche broiest things I've ever done, was then she and I ended up going back to my place and we hooked up. And then I remember I took a picture of her sleeping in my bed and sent it to him, and was like, with something rude, just like I banged the heckler or something. I don't know, just something fucking super frat boyish douchey, and felt bad about it the next day. But she was very nice. We didn't date, but we ended up hooking up a few more times and became semi friends. But yeah, wild stuff happens. It's always
it
a good
does.
time.
Hey, that's hot. Well, some of my hottest hookups have been from the worst people on the planet.
It's totally true.
I kid you not. I was hooking up with a guy who could. Okay, hold on. Let me try to rephrase this because I've said it so many times. I still stumble on my words. We were fucking, and he kept Fox News on the entire time.
Oh, Jesus. That would be an erection killer for me.
I mean, at the time, I don't care about having an erection because I was the one getting fucked. But like, something about, I don't know, I guess him hearing Tucker Carlson's point of view got him hard, and he came. I was like, oh God, why am I doing this? And of course, I had to keep going for more because it was great and I hated him and he's an absolute dick. But there's something about like the people you despise the most that make the sex kind of just like the best fucking thing ever.
That's a really common thing for sex addicts, for someone like me who that was my thing for a long time, was I didn't like emotional sex at all. So it was really, sex was always good with people that I didn't have any investment in. And so I used to hook up with this girl who was eventually, now she's in a lesbian marriage and has 2 kids. But at the time, she was dating a woman at the time, but we met through like Craigslist and back in the day, and she was just looking for she was in a lesbian relationship, but she just wanted to experience a penis every now and then. And so she would come over and we would have sex. And I remember once, and we had great sex, and it would just be like twice a month. Maybe she would just come over, and she liked it really rough. And it was just, liked it really degrading. It was very interesting because she's super feminist. She's, now in a lesbian relationship, but she just wanted to be called names, and it was interesting. But she,
I'm a feminist until I need to get railed raw.
That was
Call
it,
me
and then,
dyke.
But then afterwards, she just didn't want to, when we saw each other in public, we would barely acknowledge each other. We were just like kind of, hey. And I remember one time she was like, what I think is great about this is like, she's like, I just love that I would never want to hang out with you as a friend. She's like, I don't want that to be insulting. She's like, I don't want to insult you, but I just think it's great that like we have great chemistry in the bedroom and no chemistry otherwise. And I was like, yeah, totally. Like neither of us, we just don't get along as humans, but we have great sex.
You don't necessarily need to have that emotional connection to fuck really well.
No.
I mean, I was an escort for
Sometimes
4 years.
It's a hindrance.
Yeah, truly. I was an escort for 4 years, and almost 99% of my clients I had no emotional connection with, and I had to like fake an emotional connection, really. Although there was one client who got a little too close to me, and we ran into the grocery store one time, and I'm like on one end of the aisle, he's on the other end, and he just happens to be with his wife and kids. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I can't just like turn around and like, look scared. I have to act normal and be chill. So we're like crossing the line, crossing the aisle. And then just as we're right beside each other, we're making our way towards the opposite ends of the aisle, he does this interlocking thing with my pinky. And I'm like, dude, your wife and kids are literally right there. Shit.
Scandalous.
So, yeah, right. So, yeah, sometimes emotions can really fuck up a whole sex thing. And I told him the next session, I was like, you can't do that. It's just weird. And also because like I respect our working relationship a little too much for you to get into my personal life. I'm like, can't. Yeah.
That's so funny. You're like the HR department. You're like we have to keep it on the level, which means just nude and inappropriate. Only nude and inappropriate. Do not try to make our relationship anything other than nude and inappropriate.
Exactly. And in the bedroom, you're allowed to call me a racial slur, not outside.
But not outside.
Exactly. Because like when you're a sex worker, you're doing everything, your own marketing, your own HR, your own business. Yeah, you're doing all that. So it's really like refreshing to hear someone who's not a sex worker experience that kind of emotional disconnect. And yeah, I understand that emotional disconnect can be hot, but we grow. I find that sex for me now has to have at least some level of emotional connection. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, we're going to get married one day. Like, I should know that you're not going to an asylum after this. And like, you're not going to murder me, right? At the very least, at its most basic level.
We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Yes!
Hey, you sick motherfuckers! I've got a special treat for you. Need a new toy to spice up your sex life? Head over to loveshop.ca/sexedwithtim and get yourself a cock ring, a dildo, a vibrator, or even a life-sized sex doll. Damn, I guess love really does come in all shapes and sizes. Get 15% off your entire order when you use code SEXEDWITHTIM at checkout. They're shipping to all of Canada and the United States because North America is horny. That's loveshop.ca/sexedwithtim and use code SEXEDWITHTIM for 15% off your entire purchase. Happy orgasm! Do you like feeling sexy and looking sexy? Of course you do. Only my listeners are sexy as fuck. I have partnered with fetishwear designer Dale Kuda to bring you the hottest deals on custom jock straps, harnesses, hats, and more. Head over to dalekuda.com, that's DALEKUDA.com, and use code SEXEDWITHTIM at checkout for 25% off the entire store. Yeah, you heard me. 25% off. And cherry on top, free shipping. Oh my god. I have a few of the stuff that he has made for me, and girl, I'm wearing it right now. I'm wearing like a little jock strap so that I could easily just like slip a little butt plug or dildo every now and then here and there. And I'm on the train. I'm just like, thank you, Dale. That's dalekuda.com with the code SEXEDWITHTIM for 25% off your entire purchase with free shipping. With a deal like that, I swear I could come buckets, honey.
The show is about to begin.
Yes.
What are like some of the earliest memories of sex education that you've ever had? Like, oh, was emotional connection an important part of sex, or maybe not?
My parents were super hippies, and
Oh, cool.
so they were very into, I mean, we grew up when I was from 1 to like 5. We lived in Oregon on this sort of commune type situation. And so there was a lot of nudity. They were very open about, certainly wasn't involved in any sex or exposed to any direct sex, but they weren't shy about bodies. And, you know, there was a lot that I witnessed just as far as anatomy. And then grew up the rest of my youth in San Francisco. And again, you know, my parents were just they were very much advocates for emotion before sex, emotion having to be part of sex, not objectifying. So I got very much the feminist sort of outlook on sex when I was younger. And then I think that I'm glad that was a foundation for me, but it definitely just sort of was subsumed by like porn culture as I got into my teens. And we had like at the time, I mean, you know, either DVDs or like even VHS tapes when I was really young.
VHS
that my friends had, that we would watch.
Good times.
And so, yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of porn. And you know, your friends become your sex education. They definitely take over from your parents. And my friends at the time, especially in San Francisco, were just very sexually precocious. And so, and I think that one part of it was that I ran with this crowd when I was in high school that was very popular, but I really wasn't. Like, I was in there because I'd grown up with this guy, Jake, and he looked like straight up like Brad Pitt. Like, they used to call him Mini Brad Pitt. And he was like super popular in high school, and he was my best friend. We'd been best friends forever, but I didn't look like him. And I was not the popular kid, but I was around these popular guys, and they were just having sex all the time. Jake used to like take girls to my house when my mom was there.
Literally all the time, like, 24/7.
He was just
in the kitchen, in the bathroom, in the garage.
Yeah. And so I had this, sex was around me, but I wasn't participating. And I think I felt that contributed to some self-esteem issues. And so once I got to college and there was a little bit of an ugly duckling thing where I sort of, came into my own. I think I felt...
Sorry to interrupt you. I find that hard to believe because you're hot. I mean...
Oh, thank you.
I'd fuck you.
Well...
But then again, I'd fuck anything.
I mean, I wasn't. And I'm also... I mean, I'm not like super big. I'm like 5'8". I mean, I'm not a big like buff studly guy. I'm like a
not
I'm
my
a
type.
Pretty average dude. And And so, for me, but I do think I'm not unappealing. And once I got to college, I was just able to sort of figure out how dating worked and how to make the things that whatever advantages I did have, I really figured out how to make them work. And so that's when I think, because I had internalized a lot of insecurities, I really sort of went the opposite direction, and I overcorrected, and I was like, I need to fuck everything. And so I just became, I really turned into a douchebag.
Any
for a
hole
long
is a
time.
goal.
I was definitely, I mean, I was definitely the guy for a long time who like kept a score of how many girls I'd fucked, and it was bad for a long time. And I mean, I'm in the triple digits for sure. So
sorry, Shane. I'm
sure. Yeah, I know. I can't. There are a lot of people I can't compete with, but for a straight guy growing up in my era, I was doing pretty well.
Do you remember the first time that you had it, and what was it like for you?
Yeah, the first time I had sex was actually pretty awkward. There's this girl. It was in high school. What's that?
As it always is. It's always awkward the first time. No,
as it probably should
be. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And instruction manual.
Yeah, if your first time is like really not awkward, you're probably with like an adult or something. It's too,
hopefully you're an adult at your first time, but like Jesus. Born a porn star?
Good guy. Because my second or third time was with like an older woman, and that actually was way less awkward, but it also was like illegal. So but because I think I was 16 or 17 when I first had sex, and that was with a girl from high school, and it just was super awkward. She started crying partway through it, and I freaked out because I thought I was doing something wrong, and like that I stopped, and she was like, no, just keep going. And I was like, you're crying. I can't do this. And she was like, no. I always cry during sex. And I was like, well, that's probably not good. And so we stopped. So I didn't even finish for my first time. And so, yeah, it was terrible. She ended up, by the way, overdosing. I found out 5 years later on heroin and died. So the woman that I lost my virginity to is tragically passed.
Oh no.
That was pretty shocking.
Oh my God. She couldn't find a dick better than yours.
I guess it was just all downhill from there.
That's interesting. The guy I lost my virginity to also passed, but from cancer.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, at least mine had a good reason. No, I'm kidding. That's so...
Well, my second though, but it was interesting because that was like my first time and it was just terrible. And then my second time was like a porn movie. It was like everything. I wish I had waited, because right after I graduated from high school, there was this girl that in high school we had all had a crush on her. I'll leave her name out, but she was this like she was half Latina. She was very like, just had a lot of personality and was like super hot. And she ended up working like down the street from my house at this ophthalmologist place. And one day, it was the summertime, it was right after I'd graduated from high school. I was going to do this AmeriCorps program, so I was waiting to go to college. I was going to take some time off. She showed up at my door and like knocked on my door. And I was like, oh, hey, like, I remember you from high school. And she was like, yeah, I always see you go into your house. I work down the street. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, could I come in? I was like, yeah. And she came in and she was like, I always thought you were hot. And I was like, okay. And we ended up like making out. She went back to work, and then we just became like fuck buddies she taught me so much stuff. And yeah, it was like something that I wouldn't believe if I read it in a Penthouse magazine, that the girl just knocked on my door and came in. Man,
that's literally out of like a 90s porno. Instead of a pizza guy, it's an ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
Damn. I wonder if you used your best ophthalmologist pickup line. Like, if I put you and I together at, I don't know. So stupid. Oh my God. What was your most favorite discovery about sex? You were like, oh my God, this is fucking cool. What got you to that moment?
Oh, I mean, I think that some of the discoveries that were the coolest were probably not great for me in the long run. Like, one thing that happened to me that was really formative was after that girl, I dated another girl for a long time who I became very, very invested in. We were both way too young to be as serious as we were. She had my name tattooed on her shoulder.
Holy
it was like
shit.
hardcore.
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
Not great. And and we ended up having a really dramatic relationship. We were engaged, and she ended up cheating on me with this guy, and it totally broke my heart. And it was one of the things that sort of kicked off my period of being a really not nice guy in relationships, because I definitely resented women for a long time after that. And when we tried getting back together briefly, and when I was still really angry, I just had a lot of anger about what had happened. And when we were having sex, I had always been really gentle with her because I was just, it was that very tender, like loving sex. And I remember, was like, I know you're mad at me, just, you can let it out. And I was like, well, I don't know what that means. And she was like, whatever you need, like slap me, choke me, do whatever you need to do. And I was like, well, I don't know that that's a great idea. She was like, pull my hair, do something, let it out. And so I did. I just like pulled her hair and like choked her a little bit, and it was really cathartic, I think. And I got really into it. And that sort of opened up a world of kind of, power dynamics and BDSM stuff. And I became really dominant sexually, and it just became a thing that probably in the long run wasn't great for my mental health, or at least like just my evolution as a human. But it's something that definitely shaped my sexual history since then, between now and then.
Why isn't it not great? I mean, I think it's part of your self-discovery.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of trouble. I've been through like Sex Addicts Anonymous and everything, and I definitely, we talked about the difficulty of separating emotion from sex, and that emotionless sex can be really good. I have the opposite problem now in some ways, in that sex with emotion for many years, and even to this day, although it's getting better, was a turnoff for me. So I had real trouble with, like, I could get into as long as there was a girl that I only had sex with, or our relationship was primarily sexual, and I didn't have feelings for her, I could have sex with her 10 times a day, and just I was into it. And then as soon as I would start to like her as a human, I would have no sexual interest in her, and I would cheat, and I would find a girl that I didn't care about to fuck. And so it was really, that's not a healthy way to live, right? Like, you don't want to only fuck people that you don't care about and not have any interest in people that you care about. So it was, I think, and the foundation of it was really there. Sex became very much tied to like dominance and anger, and it wasn't healthy for me personally. There are definitely people who can be in the BDSM scene and be very, I think, emotionally
healing,
stable.
Yeah, but
yeah,
if you're conflating sex with something that you shouldn't relate it with, like your sense of self-worth or trauma or something, then maybe take a break from sex. Because like I have a very specific view when it comes to the term sex addiction. But like, that's another episode. But I do understand exactly what it is that you're referring to when it's like your emotional mess kind of gets in with the literal sexual mess. And yeah, I totally get it, because like on my Grindr profile, I am mainly looking for casual sex. So, and I mentioned that, but I also say, just because I'm looking for casual sex doesn't mean that we should be treating each other casually. Mm-hmm. Like, be a fucking human being. Be goddamn decent. Because I don't know what your experience is with talking to gay guys, but we are some of the most douchiest, the most asshole. I'm homophobic, and I'm gonna come out right now. I don't think gay marriage should exist. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, we are really catty, and we're jerks. So where was I going with this? Yeah, like it's so easy to be. Well, not easy. I mean, just be a decent human being. You don't have to be such jerkwads about this whole like sex thing. But,
Yeah, and I think for the most part, I wasn't too much like outside the bedroom. I was pretty normal. Like I could maintain good relationships with women as far as just, I worked with a lot of women at various jobs I'd had, and it was very comfortable for me to be around women in a platonic atmosphere. And then even with women that I was having sex with, once we were outside of the bedroom, it was totally normal. And like I was kind of a gentleman, I think. But when it came to sex, the only way that I could be aroused was there had to be some element of power dynamic. It had to be somewhat objectifying. That was very limiting in some ways. Like it made me not want to get into relationships, because if I was really into a girl and we were having great sex, I was like, I cannot get emotionally invested because I'll just completely check out. And yeah, I mean, for me, the addictive component was very compulsive too. So that was part of it, was I just wasn't able to maintain healthy monogamous relationships. Although, I don't think that's necessary for everyone, but for me, I couldn't do it. And it's not that cost me
a part of who you are. That's one of the things about sex addiction, that it's not in line with who you are as a person.
Right. That's a great way to put it, because I think for a lot of people, that's how they want to live, and that's fine. I have friends who are non-monogamous and in open relationships, and they're totally healthy. But for me, it wasn't consistent with, especially the values that I'd been raised with. And, so there was always this divide and this tension between who I wanted to be and the person that I was. And that kind of came to a head. And it kind of sort of came to a head with my wife, who at the time when I started dating, we were both in an open relationship. We met at a comedy club. She was really into we would have foursomes with other couples. We would swap, we would do all kinds of stuff. And there was a period of time where I just sort of had without the religious aspect, I had like a come to Jesus moment. I'm still an atheist, but there was just a moment where I realized like, this is not working for me. I'm not okay with the way our life is going. I want to have more of a connection with her that's more emotional and more profound. And we just talked about it. We went to therapy. I did a lot of soul searching, and we decided to be monogamous, and it's been a journey since then.
What are some of the things that you personally unlearned about sex? And like, sex shouldn't have to be this or that.
I think I don't know that I unlearned much. I think that I figured out that I needed to be more careful about what I consumed. Certainly like porn was a big problem for me, right? Like I think the more that you consume the kind of porn that is unhealthy for you, whatever that is, the more it's kind of toxic. You're not going to be able to sort of get out of that. For me, it was very limiting. It was almost like a little prison in my mind. And I needed to stop looking at degrading or violent porn or anything that wasn't
conducive to who you are as a person.
Yeah, and I just needed to take a break from porn for a while anyway. And I think that's a good idea for
anyone.
Skin
from your hand is peeling off from jacking off too much. Like it's just calloused.
I mean, it was, and I got to the point where like things were, and I'm sure that you've experienced this, where like, I just got to the point where I noticed that I wasn't being careful with, I was being self-destructive. Mm-hmm. And not really realizing it. I mean, I was I was doing things that...
Pointing to myself.
I was trying to see how many people I could fuck in one day. And like, I wasn't using protection regularly. And I was not...
What's protection?
Yep. And that was my philosophy at the time. Yeah, that was kind of my philosophy. I mean, I had a like fetish for, bareback. I mean, I was very unhealthy at the time, and I'm incredibly lucky that I got through all that without contracting anything serious and without hurting anyone.
Good for you.
Too bad, but yeah, I mean, looking back, I just can't believe that I was that person. I remember going to I was at the doctor for something unrelated to anything sexual, and they were asking me, oh no, I think I went one time to get an AIDS test, and they ask you all the questions, and like
Yeah.
just having to answer yes to like so many of those questions, just like how many have you had multiple partners, are you not using protection, are you being, and I was just like fuck.
Shit.
This is not good. And it was
What have I been
scary.
getting myself into? Who have I been getting myself into?
Yeah. And, especially with the internet, once like, because comedy for the most part, it was, I feel like it wasn't as dangerous in some ways as the hookups that I was just doing really randomly online. But, comedy was more sort of hit and miss. And a lot of people were more careful with protection, but not so much with just hooking up on Craigslist or hooking up on, even OkCupid or something. And just find girls and hook up and never talk.
Because it was providing an avenue for you to make it so accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, how did you then like get to this moment of turning your life around that was like, you know what, this isn't good for me anymore. I've got a girlfriend. I want to be serious with her. Let's get our shit together, Shane. So where was that light bulb moment?
I mean, it was very much a light bulb moment. It was like a mental breakdown, basically. I had kind of a nervous breakdown, and I was laying next to my then girlfriend, current wife, and she had moved from Georgia. When we had met, she was here taking care of her sister who lived nearby, and she met at the comedy club. She went back to Georgia, and we kept in touch, and she would come and visit, and we would go to like, sex parties or like have people over and like swap and hook up. And it was just this sex thing. And I was so into that aspect. And she actually moved here to be sort of like we lived as a dominant submissive couple. So she was like moved into my house as sort of my, plaything in some ways. And I really cared about her. But again, I was scared to be emotional because I didn't want to completely lose interest in her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was laying next to her one day, and we had sex with another couple or something the night before, and I remember lying there and thinking, what have I done? Now I've had someone move all the way across the country to live a life for me. Like, she's not living her life now. She's just doing the things I want her to do. I'm like controlling another person, and this is not healthy. It's not okay. And I had a panic attack, and I didn't know what it was at the time. So I went to the doctor. I was like, I need to go to the hospital. I don't know what's happening.
My heart's racing.
They were
palms
like,
are sweaty, knees weak, arms heavy. Yeah, shit.
Yeah, it was full on 8 Mile there. And I went to, and so they explained what was happening. They're like, you're having a panic attack, and this is a nervous disorder. And I had to deal with that for a while. She had to kind of help me through that because I was having some pretty major anxiety stuff. And it all came from just almost a crisis of conscience. It was a feeling that like, I can't live this way anymore. And also I was a major alcoholic at the time and just didn't realize it. And so I realized I need to get help. I need to change my life. And it was interesting because it was almost a little bit hard for her because that wasn't what she had signed up for. She also, there were parts of her that really enjoyed the aspect of the dynamic that we had. And so for me to say like, hey, it's almost like if you're with someone, right? If you were dating someone and then he all of a sudden was like, I'm a born again Christian, and now we can't, do the things that we always do. You'd be like, well, that's not what I signed up for. This is a totally different you. And so it took a while for her to decide whether it made sense for her to try to, stay with me
it for the long run. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the long run, we're both really happy that happened. She had her own little sort of come to Jesus non-religious moment. She was also an alcoholic too, still is an alcoholic. She does AA, and, she's got a good handle on it, but we're both recovering addicts, and we always will be, even though that was 10 years ago. 8 years ago, I guess,
Wow.
we still consider ourselves to be recovering addicts.
The more you talk about your experiences, the more I think we're cut from the same cloth, Shane, because I, not so much an alcoholic, but I was alcohol dependent. And what I mean by that is that I wasn't like so much addicted to it, but rather I was dependent on it to be a social person. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever make it out in public if I didn't have at least one shot. You know?
Yeah.
Damn. Who knew I
And
had
that's
this much
so
in common with a straight white guy?
that's really scary too, because that's dangerous in the comedy scene. So if you keep doing
Yeah.
comedy, like people become reliant on it. The one thing that I never did was actually I would never drink before a set. Never. I wouldn't do it because I saw so many people relying on alcohol. You know, you
To
start
get
out by saying, you know,
confidence, you know?
yeah, I just need 2 shots before every set because that loosens me up and it makes me, and then it's 3 shots before a set, and then it's I'm gonna have a few beers and a couple shots and go on
Slippery
stage.
slope.
Yeah, and then it also becomes Dumbo's magic feather, right? Where you think you need it to be funny, and people are keep drinking so that they can continue to perform because they think if I don't drink, I can't go on stage. And I have friends who just they just took them down, and they were really funny comics, and you know, now they're pretty broken people, and it's unfortunate to see. So yeah, be careful with the alcohol with comedy, people out there, and anyone who's doing it. That was the one thing I didn't do. I would drink after shows, and that was my problem.
I mean, a little substance use here and there is fine, but like just you know, when you start to get so dependent on it that it gets in the way of your daily functions, maybe seek some help, babes.
Everything in moderation, right?
Exactly. And I'm trying to say this with as little amount of irony as possible because I do have sometimes a sarcastic tone, but I'm genuinely glad that to see you, Shane, like on this journey of like recovery, and it's really nice. It's really nice to see, you know, people who are on this road of self-improvement who are also like really self-aware. Also, it's kind of turned me on, but
well, thank you. I mean, it is, you know, it feels good to be on a journey of self-improvement. It definitely, you know, I've seen the progress, and there are always going to be struggles. There's always temptations. It's always something that, like I said, I'll always be an addict, whether it's alcohol or sex, or whatever drugs you're doing or anything. I don't think you ever become a non-addict. You just learn how to live without it. And so it's an ongoing process. I don't think it'll ever be over.
yeah, I mean, with any sort of like mental health type of situation, it's always going to be a very long road ahead. And what's that thing that they always say at the end? It's like, grant me the serenity to yada yada. I can't even remember, but you know, be strong enough to figure out what you can and can't control. I guess that was the end of every session. But hey, to whoever's listening to this, wherever you are on your journey of sex or substance use or whatever it is that we've talked about, I guess just fucking laugh at it. Don't take life too seriously. Yeah. I mean, or listen to this episode again and just have yourself another laugh. But Shane, before we wrap, are you okay to play a small little game with me? It's a new segment I'm introducing this season.
Sure.
Yeah. So this segment is called Naughty or Nice. And without any context, I want you to choose naughty or nice.
Let's go with naughty.
Naughty? Okay. So this segment of the game is called Red Flags. And what it is that I have to change the context of the game with every guest. And knowing that you're married now, slight change in rules. But anyways, you and I are friends, and you're setting me up on a date. And I'm a little hesitant to go on this date because they've got a red flag. I'm going to give you 3 qualities. You're going to try to convince me why I should go on this date.
Despite the red flag.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first date is that he's got the same favorite music as me. He can get me into any 5-star restaurant that I want. But he collects human skulls, and he says, they're practically free.
So as long as, you know what, that is honestly just a unique hobby, right? I mean, how many other people you don't want to be with someone who's boring. Okay, come on, man. So someone who collects human skulls, as long as, I guess the question is, how are they collecting them? If they're collecting them from, you know,
the morgue.
Yeah, if they're collecting them from a fresh donor, That's not great. But maybe they're getting them from the I don't know, where would
A
you
graveyard?
get a skull? Maybe they're getting them from a museum or something, and that's their thing. Maybe it's skulls that are, some of the skulls are for prehistoric. Maybe they have Piltdown Man skull or something. I know that one was actually fake, but maybe they have Lucy. It could be for scientific purposes. You never know. So don't write someone off just because they have an interesting and unique hobby. That's something that we should celebrate.
I like how you describe this totally insane collection as a unique hobby. Human skulls.
My mom used to, she got really into the art of taxidermy for a while.
Okay.
So she wasn't, and
Animals, I hope.
So she had all these magazines of it would have pages and pages of eyeballs that you could purchase. They look like marbles, but they're like different types of eyeballs. So there would be like owl eyeballs and cat eyeballs and deer eyeballs. And she would be looking through these, and she would have them on, the kitchen table. And I would come to the house, and this is when I was in college. She got into this, and I would go to her house, and there would just be these magazines full of animal parts that you could purchase online. And it was terrifying, but my mom's a sweetheart. This is just something she thought was really interesting that people would. And she had a dog at the time that she wanted to.
Oh my
she
God.
thought she would eventually, when the dog passed, she would help figure out
Get
how
the
to do
eyes.
taxidermy. Yeah,
Oh.
This was going to be her first taxidermy experiment, and so it's a
And
terrifying
was it
idea.
successful?
She didn't end up doing it. I talked her out of it.
Ah.
So yeah, we did not end up stuffing Sam the dog, but that was her plan. She wanted to, and so you never know. It might just be a unique and strange and delightful hobby.
Oh God.
It makes them special.
Well, special. Sam the dog, I hope wherever you are in dog heaven, you've kept both your eyes and your balls.
Sam was short for Samantha, so she.
Oh,
she
never mind.
had her to begin with. Yeah.
Well, I hope you kept both your I don't know how dogs work. I study sex in humans, not animals. So this next date is he owns a 500-foot yacht.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's hot. Famous movie star.
Okay.
I don't know which famous. Well, let's call him Chris Evans. Totally random name that I came up with on my own. But open mouth kisses their pets.
Oh, that's not that bad. It depends on
No!
what the pet. I don't know. I guess that depends on what the pet is.
Well, Chris Evans has a dog.
Chris Evans has a dog, so he's open mouth kissing his dog. Is it all also the size of the dog? A little Chihuahua. Their tongue's very small. It's not going to do. There's not going to be a big fluid transfer there, right? It's going to be a small amount of actual swapping of DNA. So I'm not
Okay,
too
it's a
worried
Great
about that.
Dane.
Yeah, that's bad. That's hard. That's harder. That's harder to justify. Don't be French kissing a Great Dane.
No.
Did you ever watch? I watched this show, The Circle. It's like a Netflix reality show.
It's a social.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember that they had the woman on there who was drinking wine, and they were doing an interview with her at her house, and she casually just put her wine down so her dog could lap out of it and then drank some more? Did you see that episode?
Oh my God!
It went
no.
viral. It was amazing, and it was so shocking. And she was so and she was really pretty, and yet she was so casual and blasé about just I swap spit with my dog on a regular basis.
Oh my.
And I don't know that I can talk you into that one, because that was a little bit of a deal breaker for me when I saw that. I had a cat, and I used to let the cat lick my nostrils. So she would run up to me, kind of bump my head, and then she would start licking my nose. And it was just a thing that I thought was funny. And my wife would always just cringe and be like, "Well, stop that." And I was like, she likes it. And so I guess we all have weird things with our pets, but yeah, just for, just don't, especially a big dog, don't let them stick their tongue in your mouth.
Well, You heard it here, Chris Evans. Shane won't let me go on a date with you. Sorry that
Yeah,
you're making
deal
out
breaker,
with your...
even for Captain America.
Yeah, that may be America's ass, but it seems like you're just a huge ass at this point. Oh God!
You can keep America's tongue. You don't want it.
So the second half is nice. So these ones are a little more wholesome. I got two questions here for you, Shane. When was the last time you tried something completely new, and what was the result? So it doesn't have to be a sexual thing, but this is from a card deck of like sex questions.
Let's try something completely new. God, here's the problem with marriage and also like COVID too. My wife said the other day, it was so funny. We were sitting on the couch. This is something I wrote this down because I was going to somehow make it into a comedy bit, but we were sitting there and watching Netflix on the couch, and she kind of jolted upright and she was like, I just had the weirdest sense of deja vu. And I was like, really? So you're saying you feel like we've done this before? Because this is all we do. Like literally we haven't done a new thing in 3 years. So to me, that is the problem with marriage and with COVID is like you get into these routines where your life is just exactly the same all the time. So I don't know. The last time I did something new would have been 3 years ago before the pandemic. What did I do? I can't even. I've definitely tried new foods maybe in the last year.
That's cool.
But I can't. I'm trying to think of one. I don't know. God, I wish I had something new in the last 5 years that I've done.
You've been in a time loop
now.
this entire pandemic.
That's what it feels like. It just feels like
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. Yeah.
But hey, you know what? Maybe that's the new thing. This is your first time in a time loop, and
yeah.
redo.
We all tried something. I would say wearing a mask, on a public transportation or wearing a mask in a grocery store. That was all brand new for me.
There you go. And at least, hey, you're doing your part. So that's great. That's wholesome of you.
Mm-hmm.
Last question I have here is, where is a place you would like to have sex but haven't yet?
I was never into like different locations. Someone asked me that recently, where I'd had sex that was unique. And I did have sex, like I had sex on an overpass once and, but it was mostly like, it was mostly convenience. It wasn't like, hey, let's go do something wild. It was like, we can't go back to either of our houses. And so here we are. But somewhere that I'd like to have sex, see, again, I'm kind of boring. I don't think that the venue really matters.
Shaw, stop.
It's just, well, that was the thing. Like the sex itself mattered, but the venue, I don't care about.
The Staples Center.
I kind of would do it anywhere. Yeah, see, I don't have like a, fetish for being watched. I'm not an exhibitionist.
It doesn't have to be like, being seen. Just like,
what would be interesting is like
kitchen.
Sex in space. I always wondered what like zero G sex would be like. So I think that would be it. I know that you can also get on, there's a plane that they use to simulate 0G. So for movies, they go up and it's a parabola, right? So it goes all the way up as high as it can go and then it drops and you experience weightlessness. So maybe someday I'll be able to live out my fantasy that way.
I've had sex on a plane. Really uncomfortable, really inconvenient.
You joined the Mile High Club. Did you do it in the
lavatory?
The restroom,
yeah. There. Because what happened is that I was scrolling Grindr at the airport, and then I saw one profile, and he was like dressed up in his flight attendant suit. I'm like, oh, that's the same guy that's going on my plane. Hit him up. I kind of did like a back and forth kind of thing with him. We went into the lavatory, and it was. We were really lucky because it was like pretty much an empty flight. Also, there wasn't much time because I was just flying from New York to Toronto. So it was like an hour flight.
Short.
So we didn't really have much time. We made the most out of it. We got what we needed. It was really uncomfortable because
such small little lavatory. I just can't imagine. I mean, it must have been very geometrically challenging.
Yeah. It was like playing Tetris. and just the T piece did not fit into the L piece. I hope whoever's listening can imagine the T and the L pieces so you can figure out how that works. But that's it for this segment. But before we close, Shane, do you have anything to share? Can you please make like a butt and plug away anything that you want the audience to find?
Sure. So just Midnight Facts for Insomniacs is a really fun podcast, and there's a great community around it, so you can actually kind of be involved, go into our Discord and vote for topics, and check it out on any of the places that you get fine podcasts, anywhere fine podcasts are sold, as my co-host likes to say. And other than that, I'm still working on some new stuff, but I am starting to book some shows. I'll be mostly starting in the Bay Area, so mostly at Punchline and some great little smaller venue comedy clubs that are super awesome in San Francisco, like The Setup and Cheaper Than Therapy. So I'm going to be going around doing a bunch of smaller shows, and then finally starting to get out on the road again soon. And you can find all that at shanerogers.net is where I'll put up my shows as I start booking more.
That is amazing. Hopefully I can make it to a show. And to all the listeners that have made it this far into this chaotic ass conversation, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sex Ed with Tim podcast. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, because you are promoting not just queer content, but just real bullshit advice from someone who isn't really that qualified to give out advice, because don't do what I do. As I say this with literal anal fissures right now. But you all know about my fissures. I tweet about it all the time. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to another episode, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Sex Ed with Tim podcast. Sex Ed with Tim is created and produced by me, Tim Lagman. Music is Aces High by Kevin MacLeod. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at GaySlutClown and at Sex Ed with Tim. You can also like and follow me on the Sex Ed with Tim Facebook page. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for all your support, you dirty little slut.